Vietnam War. Hypothesis. The Vietnam War was controversial because it marked a point in history when communistic governments and socialism started having a drastic change on how we live our lives. Who is involved in Vietnam? Sides of the conflict. On our side of the war, which is the U.S., it was us, the United States, Southern Vietnam, and South Korea mainly. And on the other side of the war, it was mostly China and Northern Vietnam, with the Soviet Union helping. And then later in the war, Northern Vietnam took over parts of Laos and Cambodia, so that's why I added them to that side. Where did the Vietnam War take place? It took place in the sea, the air, and on land. What was the Vietnam War? It was a war between North and South Vietnam, where North was communist and the South was a republic. Why was the Vietnam War started? It was to stop the spread of communism, as Northern Vietnam and China wanted to take over Southern Vietnam and unite the two halves with an overall communistic government. However, Southern Vietnam was not amenable to this and did not want this to happen. When was the Vietnam War? The Vietnam War was from around 1955 to 1975, with the U.S. joining the fighting in around 1965. However, before 1955, France was involved, and then in 1954, they backed out. In 1964 and before, the U.S. was mostly just training Vietnamese soldiers and providing funding. However, in 1965, the American Navy was attacked, and in response, we sent troops and an increased naval presence, and our Navy moved from support roles, which is mostly just patrolling international waters, to more combat roles where they carried out active missions against Northern Vietnam and China. In 1968, the U.S. involvement peaked with around 536,000 troops in Vietnam. This was not the total number of troops, however, there were several million overall. The U.S. troops would usually go there for around a year before being shipped back home, and newer troops would be shipped back out. But by this time, there had been tens of thousands of U.S. casualties, and Navy ships were supporting most of the operations on land, and had others even staged off of them as a mobile command base. Media. This was the first time war coverage was released, and it was really the first time there was even ever photos or videos taken of the war. There was uncensored footage and pictures, as there were no laws as of yet to stop all that. And due to this, and everybody knows the media, they always exaggerate. So they highlighted the high casualties, which in turn lowered support from the public and caused riots back home. Conclusion. The war showed that even disputes over types of government can lead to wars with massive casualties. Vietnam also showed that larger countries aren't above using smaller countries as a place to wage proxy wars, which is where larger countries use something else to fight between each other without actually fighting against each other. Vietnam also showed that no one's out of danger when wars are being fought, Originally, the countries Laos and Cambodia were neutral, and then an invasion from North Vietnam turned them into war zones where thousands died after northern Vietnam wanted to use them as an area to move their troops to get to southern Vietnam from the side. Finally, Vietnam's lasting impacts on the world that we live in today can be seen in addition to all of the veterans that were not recognized at the end of the war that had suffered from wounds, physical and psychologically, from the terrible things they went through in the service of our country. And before I close this out, I'd just like to thank my grandfather for letting me interview him. He told me some things that he saw in his time serving our country. He was on the aircraft carrier USS Oriskany, and when a load of magnesium flares went off. And magnesium flares are meant to burn so hot they won't even go out. They're in water. And the end result was they melted through the deck of the aircraft carrier, which is several inches thick of steel, set fire to the front half of the ship, and it was so bad that when my grandfather went in to look for survivors, he saw one man standing up, but when he went to touch him, the fire had been so hot that when he touched him, the man dissolved into ash. Thanks for listening. Merry Christmas.